Are we good? We're on. Okay. Hello, Facebook people. Thanks for joining in. If anybody's out there, hopefully you'll join in and listen. This is an AEON3 meeting. Tonight we have a fun topic. We're talking about the 13-year-old who, and I'm going to add the word accidentally, killed the world. And it's about the ethics of biohacking. So just by hands, how many people have heard of biohacking? So about half. So that's pretty good. Cool. Okay. So welcome to AEON3. We're going to start off with an overview of AEON3, as I always do. Most of you have heard it, but Heather hasn't, and maybe some people on Facebook haven't, or YouTube haven't, so I'll do it again. So in the evolution of mankind, there are three different stages that in my perception, the way I think about this. In the first eon, it went on for a very long time. It's before we began writing things down. When we lived kind of in harmony with nature, we were very much animals living in a natural way, feeding off the land and really acting as individuals within a natural society. And then in the second eon, we began writing things down. And that for me is the change that's led to our modern society. The way we are today is because we started writing things down. And really we're in what I would call the long tail, or the end of the second eon, when we're really seeing the great effect of us writing things down, recording information, and then sharing it between other people. It gives us obviously a huge advantage that when we start from the very beginning of our lives, we can rocket ahead by just absorbing all the knowledge of all of our ancestors. I mean, just think about how amazing that is. Everybody that's ever lived, we can hear their thoughts pretty much if they lived in the second eon. But everything before that is lost. And we really have no way to know other than fossils and scientific study and things like that by observing the way they lived, but we don't have any written evidence of them. Make sense? The third eon is when we move past biology and change. Now there's lots of different words. There's lots of different words for this. So some folks call it transhumanism. I don't know who came up with that, but I'm going to go with Ray Kurzweil, because he's probably the one that came up with that, or somebody in that realm. The first time I learned about this was a paper from Werner Vinge from the University of San Diego in 1973. A very short paper called The Coming Singularity. Some people just call it the singularity. There's a lot of people that call themselves singularists. I wouldn't do that because it's too hard to pronounce. So that's kind of the idea. I'm a little more focused on human beings. A lot of the singularity ideas tend to lead towards things like AI merging with humans, or humans and AI, or AI taking over, or something like that. I tend to think it's just a natural evolution of humanity. Much like we evolved from the first to the second eon, I think we'll evolve from the second to the third eon, and we'll just become something different than we are today, like we are today something different than what we were in the first eon. Make sense? Everybody good? Okay, good. That's an overview. I'll go with that one.
The first two eons line up roughly with the Paleolithic and the Neolithic.
Roughly with the Paleolithic and Neolithic.
But the third eon is radically new to me.
I think the perception, just for those of you online, and I think you'll hear it in the replays, but the statement was the third eon seems to be lining up with, what's lining up with the third eon?
In the first and second, I said
the Neolithic and the Paleolithic. But then the third eon is something new that's not lining up with anything.
That's right, it's totally new.
But I think it is lining up with something. I think because we're in the middle of it, you can't see it. But I think we're in a period of the greatest extinction that will ever be known in the history of the world. Get it? Because you're in the middle of it, it's very hard to see, right? And of course, a complete and utter change of the climate caused by an animal. First time that we know of on a planet, right? First we've ever observed that. So those things, when you get 100 years in the future or 200 years in the future and you're looking back, I think you will see a very much alignment with a change in the natural environment, more than you perceive today. But it's hard because, like I said, we're in the middle of it, so it's really hard to see. How's the volume? Is it too loud, too soft? Everybody good? Okay, cool. All right, our sponsors, I just want to say thanks very much to Pixelmova. Hans, thank you very much for doing this for us. Everybody give Hans a big hand. Woo-hoo! Hans does all our filming. We had some rocky videos at the beginning before Hans really got this dialed in, but now they're mostly perfect most of the time. Woohoo! So thank you, Hans. And also to the dock, Huntington Beach, for sponsoring this space for us to have this space. So ground rules, you guys all know these. I'm not an expert. I'm not something other than an expert, right? I'm just an explorer. I go out and learn things. I study these subjects. I research. I have a vast amount of knowledge because I've been researching this particular subject for a very, very long time. Many people that know me here know that I've been going on 20 plus years of being completely convinced that the third eon was coming, and I haven't really changed my rap at all in that time frame. And it's been kind of fun watching things happen that now everyone kind of gets it and everyone kind of accepts it. So it's been wild, that ride. But I'm definitely not an expert on the subjects I talk about. There's always somebody that knows more than me. If you are an expert and you have inside knowledge or I say something wrong, that's a really important thing to feel free to jump in, correct. This is a discussion, it's not just me talking. The reason I do these lectures is to give us a common groundwork so that then we can have a productive discussion later. And the third one is participation equals value. The more you get out of this is the more you put into it. So it's a lot of fun. I really thank all you guys for coming because I really enjoy all your company. I've met you all many times now and it's just a lot of fun. So this episode is the 13-year-old who killed the world, and I would add accidentally killed the world, and it's about the ethics of biohacking. And I got my picture of my girl there, you know, she's doing this, looking at the world. This is the definition of biohacking, the activity of exploiting genetic material experimentally without regard to accepted ethical standards or for criminal purposes. I didn't make that up. That is the Webster's Dictionary definition of biohacking. And then I wanted to add something a little more because that sounded kind of nefarious, right? And I think most people that I've either run into or that I know or that I've observed online, they don't think of it like that at all. They're not doing something criminal. They're doing something beautiful. Yes, ma'am?
Do you know what year this was added to Webster's?
I don't. It just comes up when you type biohacking definition. It comes up first in the Google search and says Webster's, but it doesn't have a year. I think I'd have to go to Webster's. But that's a really good question because it might be either too early or too late, too new, right? And it's interpreting, so it's hard. That's why I'm not in the dictionary business because that's tough. This is what Wikipedia says. A do-it-yourself biology is growing biotechnological social movement in which individuals, communities, and small organizations study biology, life science using the same methods as traditional research institutions. That, to me, is what most people that call themselves biohackers would say they are. And I was just uncomfortable, to your point, with the Webster's definition, so I wanted to put up a different definition from a less trustworthy source, historically speaking. So it's somewhere between those two is where this thing lands. Oops, whoa, that was weird. So is biohacking good or evil? What was that one? Outcome. Depends on the outcome. Could be both, right? Could be both. Could kill us all. Could save us all. Could be the future.
Also depends on the intention.
On the intention, yeah. Are you purposefully trying to do criminal activity, or are you trying to do something really cool that just makes you better? So the way a lot of this seems to have started is people investing in themselves and trying to make themselves better, smarter, faster, thinner. I think there's a song about that. But yeah, they're trying to do that, exactly. And there's a growing frustration with universities that because what they do is typically behind closed doors. They're not very transparent about what they're working on. They only become transparent when they achieve something. And you'll see that kind of reoccurring theme in this talk tonight of, I think that's the genesis of this problem, is that because they're not transparent enough for obvious reasons, right? They're trying to patent things, they're trying to profit from those things, they're trying to gain reputational advantage from those things. But it's caused a scenario where things happen in the laboratory and then later they come out and people, much like we did with computer science, people are beginning to feel that's unacceptable. And with this mass communication system of the internet, where information can be transferred between people very rapidly, it also brings into question the whole, do you need to have a degree to do this? Do you have to go to university to do this? What's the advantage of someone with a PhD who might have taken 8 or 9 plus years to get that degree and is now massively behind and on a completely different subject than someone who's doing it as a hobby? So it's tough. It's a lot of questions, and that's why I thought this was an interesting and fun subject. So both, I think, is my answer, which you guys all just said, pretty much round robin. So let's look at some examples. So I started going through and I started doing slide after slide of examples and an explanation and me talking, and then I found this website video that was perfect. It like did every one. So I'm going to play them and then I'm going to pause and talk about each one as it goes through. Does that make sense? Because it was literally everything I'd researched and a couple that I missed, so it was much easier. Okay, so this one is electronic tattoos. And this is a big and interesting industry. So I'm going to go ahead and, I think if I click on this, it'll go.
And these are devices that are mounted on the skin and allow for a simple integration of electronics with the human body. So this is really going beyond what the fitness tracker is. And we're right now looking into the medical field specifically because there's a lot of monitoring devices that take up a lot of room and space. So rather than going to the doctor once a year to get your physical, this tattoo could be something that you just put on your body once a year, and it monitors everything that they would do in a physical and sends that to your doctor. And if there's an issue, they can call you. So the tech tattoos can really tie in everything you want to have. So it can look at early signs of fever, your vital signs, heart rate, everything that it needs to look at to notify you that you're getting sick or your child's getting sick. So another beautiful thing that tech tattoo kind of takes over and disrupts the market is in the banking industry. We carry wallets around and they're so vulnerable. The tech tattoo, you carry all your information on your skin, and when you want your credit card information or your ID, you can pull that up automatically through the system. So the great thing about this idea is that it not only serves a really awesome purpose, but it can also be really aesthetically fun. So tech tasks are something that I'm passionate about and our team here at Catholic Moon is very passionate about, and we're excited for the public to see what we've been creating and to really change the industry of technology with something like the temporary tattoo. And Chaotic Moon is excited to bring it to you in the near future.
So that's the name of their company, Chaotic R&D, Chaotic Moon. Have you? It's rare that I get to see somebody so passionate, so excited, and at the same time so fabulously naive, right? There's so many things in there that just as a computer science professional that I look at that terrify me, right? The whole hackability of that, right? And its skin surface and its very personal data. And when you start to think if you went subcutaneous, right, and you got a little deeper into the skin with paints that are invasive and that still conduct electricity and on and on and on, I watched that and my brain just started going wild with all the things that you could do. You're basically printing a circuit board on your skin, which makes the whole surface of your body, and you could do it inside your body on organs, right? You could surgically go inside and tattoo an organ to produce it, and on, right? Think it through. Think of all the things you could do with this very simple technology and how amazing it is, and then the infrastructure that we don't yet have to keep all that safe. Right? Make sense?
15, 20 years ago, I was in the banking environment. We were talking about smart cards that store all your financial data. So you never had, you just walk into the store, write that card, it would know everything about your financial transaction, update your checking account, pay the bills, whatever it might be. And this is going a little bit further or deeper into that.
Yeah.
Where it's not a biological thing.
Yep, absolutely.
That is just,
But it's also beautiful. I mean, that's the thing I love about it is a little scary. So this is a guy named Tim Cannon, and Tim, yeah, I'm just gonna go with Tim. So this is a thing he made called Circadia, and it goes inside your arm, and it's a giant block. Now, one of the things Tim figured out, which is really cool, is that that can be charged externally. It uses wireless charging. So I can just tell you one of the huge problems in biohacking that's going on right now. It's illegal to use anesthetic drugs if you're not a licensed anesthesiologist. So because of that, guess who's doing all these subcutaneous, under your skin surgeries? Piercing artists, tattoo artists, because they can. Because of earrings and subcutaneous things and things they can inject under your skin. So like all of these are being done by tattoo parlors. Now here's the problem. These little devices traditionally wear out. One of the ones that's very popular is cutting open your fingers and putting magnets inside under your finger pads. And I can't express to you how wild this is. You can now feel, because of course your fingertips are one of the most sensory extravagant places on your body. You can feel magnetism. You can touch an electrical wire or hover your hand over an electrical wire and know if it's charged or not. You get sensory perceptions that are literally superhuman by just putting magnets in your fingers. The problem is it works great when it's hugely painful because you have to do this with no anesthetics, right? So they cut you open, they put these things in, and then they give you a couple of stitches and put them back up, which sounds horrible in your fingertips, right? Horrible. And then you have extrasensory perception for a while because scar tissue builds up, the magnets get weaker, and they have a lifespan, and anything that's electrical powered dies out. So then you have to have it removed and replaced. So it's worse. So there's a lot of problems with this startup, especially of injectables. It's really, really rough. And Tim figured out at least that he could recharge externally. And just to give you a clue, these are LED lights that are lighting up under his skin that you're seeing through his skin. So I'm going to let him talk a little bit about what he's doing, just to give you a better perspective. Okay, I got to read this to you. So actually, I'm gonna turn this off, the sound. So this is a group of biohackers that developed eye drops using a deep sea substance called CE6, and they put them in their eyes. They did this, and what it gave them was the ability to see in the dark. They could see accurately up to 50 meters away. Yeah, and there's pictures of them, which I had a whole slides, but this was just much easier, of them putting drops in this subject's eyes. And he, with 100% at 50 meters, oops, sorry, going back, at 50 meters could see 100% of the... Temporary? Temporary. It dies off after a while. But he could see 50 meters. You know how far 50 meters is? That's a long, long, long way in total darkness. He could see human shapes standing next to trees, and he could identify trees versus human shapes at 100%. Other people that didn't have this could only see about 30 to 60% of the time. So no way could you misinterpret. That worked great. But holy cow, you're putting an untested biological substance into your eye. Now, there was a lot of science behind this before they did it. There was a scientific group that did a study on it and came up with the idea and said this will work, but no one had ever done it, of course, on a human before. These guys took it to the next thing and just did it. They read up how to do it, made up their own concoction of the ingredients, and then injected it into the guy's eyes to see what would happen. Okay, enough said about that. Moving on. I thought the examples would be good just to give you an idea of what's going on out there. So this is Project Cyborg. This one you'll recognize. Oh, no, you won't. Sorry, that's Ken Warwick. Ken Warwick's been around for a long time, interconnecting technology with the human body. That's kind of his thing. So since the 90s, he's implanted various chips and electrodes into his body that allows him to have all kinds of different senses and perceptions than most of us get to experience. He has a transponder in his forearm that allows him to operate doors, lights, and heaters and computers just by waving his arm around. He's working on a new implant that would connect his nervous system to the internet, and his thoughts and emotions could be transferred from one person to another. So, you know, that's pretty crazy. And he's been doing this on his own for decades, just playing around with injectables and attachables. So when I was very young, one of the first things that I ever saw was Hewlett-Packard was working on getting cells, human cells, to grow on top of a computer chip and then using the computer chip to control the cells. And that was in 1978 that I saw that. You know, the big chips with the giant fingers, you know, those old chips. And then the cells were just sitting on top in a little petri dish, and they would react to instructions from the computer cells. And that was one of the things that really drove me way back in the late 70s into this thought of this is all going to merge. This is all one thing. There isn't a large amount of difference between software code instruction and biology code instruction. We just don't understand how to blend the two. We now know that so well, and with the wealth of information that's being deposited on the internet, that average people with enough time and study can actually do these things. Make sense? There's a few more of these. So this is the personal trainer. Ben Greenfield is a fitness coach who uses biohacking to take his clients' health and fitness up to the next level. To boost performance, he uses neurostimulation, which delivers low current to specific areas of the brain and can also be effective against depression. That's actually where this came from, was antidepressant technology. He coaches top-tier triathlon athletes to enhance their bodies through a unique nutrition plan and cold thermogenesis so they can achieve incredible performance in a short time. Obviously, that's big money, right? That would be something that if you could help, even if you had a 10 or 15% gain, there's no drugs here. This is him helping you to be a better you quite naturally, right? And there's a lot of this biohacking that goes on that's very natural. It's not like you're doing some of this other crazy stuff that you've seen. It's where people are really focusing on what works. And actually, there was a graphic that I saw that I didn't pull it up because it was just so complicated it would take forever. And I thought about maybe zooming in on part of it. But a guy mind mapped the biohacking conference that just happened of what the subjects were and what every speaker was talking about, and came up with basically a catalog of every aspect of biohacking. And it was fascinating because a lot of it was about sleep management, which makes us better people, and food and nutrition and the stuff that we already know, but putting them together into a more holistic program that you could live by with certain chemicals that you're ingesting, certain drugs or vitamins that would then change you into a significantly better person. And it works. People have lost huge amounts of weight, increased their cognitive abilities, increased their physical ability to do physical things. And it was just amazing. But the mind map was so big, but it wasn't this kind of stuff. It was more natural and organic kind of stuff. So a lot of biohacking is just about observing and recording, which makes it to me a lot like regular old science. And one of the areas of science that does not get a lot of attention is a combined holistic look at what makes you a better you, right? We tend to focus on nutritionalists, focus on nutrition, right? And then that's the way doctors are. They focus on their specialty. As scientists, they focus on the certain areas. It's very rare to look at it holistically and look at maybe changing your sleep pattern has a big difference on what you eat, or what you eat has a big difference on your sleep pattern, right? Make sense? So I thought that was interesting that the biohacking conference kind of devolved into, what I would call regular health and self-management. So it really did. So let's talk a little bit about Bulletproof here. So Dave Asprey has spent over $300,000 over 15 years hacking his own biology. He's lost over 100 pounds and improved his IQ score. He's most famous for his Bulletproof coffee. It's a toxin-free coffee which mixed with butter and MCT oil can boost your performance. He also runs an annual biohacking conference called the Bulletproof Conference that has an entrance fee of $15.99 to present his newest experiments, including methods to lower biological age. And this is, of course, the one we started with. Tim Cannon is the first known human to implant a chip transmitting biological data to an Android device. This actually made quite a bit of press when it happened back in a couple of years ago. The chip was implanted without anesthesia, and is charged wirelessly. Text from your phone can be displayed via LED through your skin. Why? Text messages are sent if the body reaches 100 degrees, and medical data is stored in the device, allowing Cannon to track his health with his phone. So I want to pause on that one. So first of all, let's go back to no anesthesia, that giant block. Can you even imagine? The incision is like this wide. They put it in this way, and then they turned it and then went under the skin. I can't imagine how much that hurt. He must have some special kind of mojo to control his mind, or he just passed out because it was so nasty. But yeah, more likely that he just passed out. But it's an interesting idea. If you had an implanted device inside your body that could be remotely charged, then you could monitor your vitals in a way that we really can't. Think about blood chemistry. You could have an onboard blood chemistry monitor that's not external to you, that's running, that's also evaluating all kinds of things. This probably is a technology of the future, not invented in a lab. Say again?
Breathalyzer.
Like a breathalyzer, sure.
Drink too much and won't let you start your car.
Interestingly, we have a company here at the dock that's doing that same thing, where they're creating a patch that actually, it's a patch you wear, and it changes color based on your blood alcohol level. So imagine that inside your body. that's constantly monitoring you and telling you all kinds of things, not just blood alcohol, you know, overall health. You know, am I tired? Should I sleep? Remember that thing that most of the biohacking that's done is about self-control. What if you had a device that could tell you more accurate information about what your body really needs right now, right? That's one of the things we don't know. We get working and we focus our mind and we forget about our body. It's a very human thing to do. And next thing we know, we're like, oh my God, I can't stand up, I'm so woozy. Or I drank too much coffee, or I ate too much, or I drank too much, or on and on and on. So this is a really interesting idea. I think Tim's onto something, but the way he's kind of started here is pretty nightmarish. Okay, audible colors. So this guy's also a little bit famous. I'm going to leave the bar up there. So Neil Harbison is the first person in the world to have an antenna implanted in his skull, and it's the first cyborg to be recognized by a government. I think that's interesting. He's colorblind, so his antenna uses audible vibrations to translate colors and images and sounds directly into his brain, very similar to what we were playing with earlier. His Wi-Fi enabled device allows him to connect to the internet and receive signals from satellites, but more importantly, there are 5 people in the world, 1 in each continent, that is allowed to send him images, sounds, or videos through that device, so he can communicate in a wider level. That one to me was really interesting. So it's very rudimentary, right? And it's all homemade. But think about what we're talking about, the ability to interconnect people person to person, kind of like what we do with our cell phones. One of the things that most people kind of know and feel intuitively, the next thing after cell phones is an implanted device. If you just look up implanted device and biohacking, which you should do on the internet, my goodness, are people amazing. Cutting open a little part of your ear here and inserting earbuds that are wireless directly into your ear that recharge automatically. And you can barely see them because they're behind the ear. What a great idea, right? Maybe. The problem is that every few years you might need to have your ear cut open and new earbuds put in. But that's the next thing. Do you guys remember a long time ago I used to talk about the MARC chip? The multiple array retinal chipset? I started talking about that in the 90s. So what that is, it's a chip that goes at the back of your eye where your blind spot is, where your optic nerve comes together, and it has little gold pins that stick into your optic nerve. And it was invented for people with retinitis pigmentosa by the Wilmer Eye Institute at John Hopkins. That was a long time ago, so I'm trying to remember all the details. But what it does is it takes 2 cameras mounted on your glasses, and there's a little antenna that then communicates to the chip in your eyes, and it basically makes it so that the blind can see. And there's a Discovery Channel show that they did, 10 years ago, on a gentleman who had been blind for a very long time. He got these chips in his eyes and he could see. Very low grade, very low resolution, small number of pixels, but that technology could be ramped up to much higher resolution, right? So it is almost similar to our current visual field. What's more interesting about that is that if you had a MARC chip in your optic nerve, it wouldn't necessarily just receive information, it could also broadcast information, right? So that you could see through my eyes, or I could see through your eyes. Full stereoscopic vision. No one's ever done that. If you think about now that I've told you that, your visual field as you're looking around the room, how chaotic it is, right? How much the picture is changing constantly. And the way we see is very strange. We only look at small parts of the picture and our brain fills in the rest. What if we could take that field and transmit it to someone else's brain? Would that work? We don't know. But this is right in the realm of something like LASIK. Right? This is definitely ripe for biohacking. You're outside of the area of anesthetics and those types of things. So interesting. So I'm going to move on to sixth sense. A group of biohackers have implanted small magnets, I told you guys, so that they can feel things completely invisible to most people. The brain processes the new information as a new sense and allows them to feel with their hands electronic and magnetic fields. They're able to feel the live wires versus the dead wires, and they can also feel security gates they pass through at stores or at the airport because they're putting out a magnetic field, right? Pretty interesting. And then, of course, anti-aging or age killing. Dr. Aubrey de Grey believes the first person who will be 1,000 is already alive today, and that we're on the cusp of a biological revolution. I think most folks in this area agree with that. His model of gerontology is built on the principle that every metabolic reaction can be described with 7 categories. These 7 deadly sins constitute all pathological effects of aging, and scientists are now able to control and repair each of these different types of damage. That is theoretically correct, but is not, we're definitely not there yet. The therapy can take people 60 and rejuvenate them enough so that they won't be biologically again 60 until they're 90. So about a 30-year gain. And I would say, we did the one on aging just last week, right? And when we looked at that, we're definitely able to do much more now just because we know more about health. We're using our knowledge to be healthier and stronger and eat better and sleep better. And we're kind of biohacking ourselves. We're just not thinking of it that way, right? But when you start to add just a little bit of technology into this, that next leap is about to happen, where we'll start to feel comfortable with something in our ear or something in our eye or something under our skin, right? As long as it's not too painful. But if it gives us a sense, and this is one of the dangers, is that if I have the ability to sense live wires versus non-live wires, and somebody else doesn't, and we're both electricians, which one's more valuable? I am. One of the problems with this technology that I've been talking about forever is once you cross to internal devices, right? It's a technology divider. People that have it will be superior to people that don't. If I had a mark chip in my eye, I could be using a computer right now to transmit images to me doing augmented reality, and I would be sharing this information with all of you with the chips. You'd be seeing it in 3D, rotate it, annotate it, all with your eyes. Though the rest of you would be stuck with this thing. See the difference? It's quite a difference once these technologies start to roll. And biohacking is really going to push this forward because so far, it just hasn't happened. But these early pioneers are interesting, and we may yet, 100 years from now, look back at these people and really venerate them or hate them, right? They're going to go one way or the other. And of course, I've talked about this many times. This is a great idea. We, as of yet, can't do anything even close to it, but if you could upload your consciousness, that would be cool. Stephen Hawking explained the brain is like a program in the mind, which is like a computer, so it's theoretically possible, that's a great leap, to copy the brain into a computer. Many biohackers claim that quantum computers will make this possible, to have a map of all the neurons and all their connections. Who knows, that's a long ways off. And then artificially activate groups of neurons to basically have a copy of a person's brain and transfer it into another body. And of course, once you get off biology, I don't think you'll want to go back to biology. You guys have heard these before. And then human energy, this one is great. Naomi Kisner, I think I'm saying that right, has developed a concept for a jewelry collection that converts kinetic energy from the body directly into electricity. So she explored the post-humanistic approach that sees the body as a resource and as basically a battery. She's going the full matrix here. These little pieces harvest energy from blood flow and from the electric pulses sent by the neurological system through the wearer's spine. And I think they're just beautiful. And they can be used to produce energy, and that energy would be infinite as long as we're alive. Really interesting. So reaching a form of immortality, if we could manage to live forever, would also provide an infinite renewable energy for our needs if the concept is developed. So that's it for that one. Pretty interesting, huh? Lots of people doing interesting stuff. I love the jewelry designer gal. I think it's very practical and fun. And that's my favorite type of stuff like this, is something that, isn't truly frightening. It's just kind of cool. So it all sounds like really good fun, doesn't it? Up to a point, right? It's kind of like the Internet of Things for your body, right? What could be more cool? Interconnected and sharing ideas and generating power, and it's all really cool. And I can feel magnetism with my fingertips. It's all really good. I get why it's compelling, right? It's exciting, it's compelling, it sounds really cool.
It's going to add new meaning to hearing voices in your head.
I just heard voices in my head just a little while ago using that device over there. It was interesting. So how many people know who this lovely lady is? Woo! So this is Jennifer. I'm going to let Jennifer, she's of course from University of California, Berkeley. That should be a clue. And I'm going to let her talk to you a little bit. Oh, I got to turn the sound up before I do that. I have no idea how loud this is, so it might be terrible. but I'll correct it if it is. Ready, go. And this will be nasty.
It's a wonderful thing to recognize fundamental science that has led to discoveries that I think will have a real impact in the future, and also to recognize the large body of work that has gone into this technology development.
What exactly is CRISPR-Cas9? It was not originally intended as a genetic editing tool. It was actually a defense system found naturally in some bacterium archaea. Pictured here is a phage-invading bacterium. More often than not, a phage will insert its DNA into the host, leading to the host destruction. But if the cell is lucky enough to survive the attack, it will incorporate part of the attacker's DNA into the CRISPR array located within its own genome. In a sense, it remembers what the attacker looked like. The bacterium then transcribes cRNAs from this CRISPR array, including sequences that can recognize viral attackers that it has seen before, and sequences that can bind to another critical RNA called tracer RNA. These two RNAs bound together can act as a GPS for an enzyme called Cas9. When phage DNA reappears, it guides the Cas9 protein to the invader and unwinds the invading DNA to check its identity. If there is a match to the cRNA, Cas9 will activate two of its molecular scissors and cut both strands of the invading DNA, thereby incapacitating it.
So, before we go any further, how much does that sound, for those of you in the computer science realm, exactly like a real cool error-checking anti-hacking mechanism? Sure. Right? It sounds exactly like the anti-security protocols we do. It's doing checking of the DNA, it's unwinding it, it's looking at it, it's inspecting it, and if it matches, it's allowing it through. But do you guys get the basic idea? We're able to cut out a part of a DNA strand and then reinsert it into another DNA strand very easily. Now, very easily is a tough one, because it used to take a very long time to do this, and it was an extremely intensive process that was really rough to do. So that was the problem. Any type of gene splicing or genetic manipulation didn't really work most of the time, and it took a very long time. It had to have a big giant lab, and it was really expensive. This is still not child's play. CRISPR is not child's play, but it is something you can do in days or weeks, not years or decades. And that's the difference, is that you can make these, you can edit DNA and play with it so rapidly now that we can begin to explore. So Jennifer is the one that is credited with inventing that DNA. Raj, can you turn the temperature down? It's getting really hot. It might just because I'm in front of this, but it's getting warm in here. Everybody else warm? Yeah, it's definitely getting warm. Our temperature thing goes on a timer, so when it hits a certain time, it heats us up, which isn't always good. So that is basically what she is credited with inventing. Now, there was a lot of skullduggery on, did she invent it or did another university invent it? And a lot of this is, when we're ready to have a new technology, it kind of appears everywhere, right? Because we've just gotten to the point that we're able to do this. So she's the one that is credited with CRISPR today, and she obviously had a huge part in it. So, and that's from UC Berkeley, go Bears. And then I'm gonna switch. Boonk. I'm going to try to get back to my slideshow. And I think it's this one. So Jennifer Doudna. And then a few years went by. And Jennifer began to think about what she had created and given us all. And she began to have some doubts.
Well, CRISPR is an acronym that actually represents a sequence of DNA letters in the genome of the cells. It's found in bacteria, and it was interesting to scientists originally because it's a bacterial immune system, a way that bacteria can fight viral infection. But the CRISPR acronym has now become widespread in the media as an indication of a new technology for gene editing. And the story of how an adaptive immune system in bacteria was harnessed as a technology for gene editing is really part of what Kraken radiation is about. So the CRISPR gene editing technology is a tool that scientists can use to So I like to use the analogy of a word processor on our computer. So we have a document, so you can think about the DNA of the cell like the text of the document that has the instructions to tell the cell how to grow and divide and become a brain cell or a liver cell or develop into an entire organism. And just like in a document, the CRISPR technology gives scientists a way to go in and edit the letters of DNA, just like we might cut and paste text in our document or replace whole sentences, even whole paragraphs or chapters. We can now do that using the CRISPR technology in the DNA of cells. So when we think about a technology that allows precise changes to DNA to be made, for scientists, this is sort of really a gift that allows research to proceed very quickly in terms of understanding the genetics of cells and organisms, but also provides a very practical way to solve problems. And there's many that we could discuss, but I'll mention a couple that I think are particularly exciting. So in clinical medicine, the opportunity to make changes to blood cells that would cure diseases like sickle cell anemia, a disease where we've understood the genetic cause for a long time, but until now there hasn't been a way to actually think about treating patients. And now with this technology, it's possible in principle to remove stem cells that give rise to blood cells in a person's body, make edits to those cells that would correct the mutation causing sickle cell disease, and then replace those cells to essentially give a patient a new set of cells that don't have the defect. So I think that's very exciting. There are multiple research groups right now working on doing just that. So I think that's a future, probably sometime in the next 2 to 5 years we will see clinical trials in that area, and we hope real progress towards curing that disease. But there's another example that I think is also potentially very impactful clinically, but it has a very different kind of strategy, is the idea of making edits to pigs to create animals that are going to be better organ donors for humans. And so pigs are already of interest for organ donation, but imagine that we could make edits to the DNA of pigs to make their organs more human-like, and also to remove any viruses from pig cells that might otherwise infect a patient.
So I want you guys to know, of course, now we have done this. We have pigs and sheep that are blended with human DNA. That we're already past that. This is a little bit old, but that's quite a jump from just a couple of years ago creating this technology to where we're now creating genetically exact organs for you and you and you, right? They're organs made. It's a pig whose genetic structure is tailored to grow an organ for an individual human or a sheep. Make sense? Pretty cool. Sorry to interrupt, Jennifer. Please continue.
And those are both things that are actively underway using the CRISPR technology. And then a third area that I think is interesting to think about from the perspective of global impacts in disease is thinking about using gene editing not to change the DNA in people per se, but actually to affect the kinds of insects that transmit disease to people. And the idea here is that one could use a gene editor to create mosquitoes that would be unable to transmit viruses like dengue virus or Zika virus by using a technique called gene drive that allows traits to be spread very quickly through a population using an efficient way of gene editing, such as the CRISPR tool.
So gene drive terrifies the crap out of me. Think about what we're talking about. We're able to manufacture a new species of mosquito that can't transmit Zika virus, as an example. And we would genetically alter that species so that it would no longer have that threat to us. Does that scare anybody? Right, think about what you don't know. Think about the long tail of what else is going on. nature is a big, giant, complex organism that we know actually very little about. But this is the whole, once they've seen Paris, they can't go back, right? You guys hear me talk about C-sections all the time. Once we started doing C-sections, I believe it is inevitable that at some point it will be illegal for babies to be born naturally, because human head size is getting larger and larger and larger. Babies that should have died in breech or their parents died in breech are being born all the time. You're introducing a whole new set of genes into the human gene pool that would never have been there organically. And you're going to do the same thing with everything we touch from here on. What a change in the last 2 or 3 years, and rocketing forward like crazy with no handle. We don't have the simulation engines yet, computer software-wise. We don't have quantum computing. We cannot calculate the impact of these changes with any degree of accuracy. But does that mean you should let people die of the Zika virus? Should babies that can be born through C-section be allowed to die in the birth canal? Once you've seen Paris, it's very hard to go back to the farm, right? You cannot put this genie back in the bottle. It's genius technology. It's going to do something wonderful and potentially disastrous at the same time. So biohacking isn't just being done by crazy people with tattoos shoving stuff under their skin. And many of them have PhDs, those people doing that. It's being done at the top university systems throughout the world. This is a form, a very high form, of biohacking where you just don't understand the long tail effect. So I just want to interrupt her there. Now, the reason I say this is that I know that Jennifer knows this better than anyone. She's written a book here called A Crack in Creation. It's a new book. I do recommend anybody who's interested in this subject, get that book, get it on Amazon, download it, buy it at your bookstore, buy it at Barnes & Noble. That would be weird. A physical book. How cool. And read it. And you'll understand more about what she talks about in that book with what she talks about next.
And I think that's an opportunity that could have very big impact in terms of global health, but also requires obviously some very thorough vetting and discussion about potential environmental impact. I think one of the aspects of this technology that's been very interesting to me personally is my own kind of personal growth through the last few years. I think that when I started this research project, which actually began now almost 10 years ago in the lab, we were certainly not thinking about technology that would allow alteration of human evolution or anything of that nature. And over the last few years, as this technology has begun to be deployed globally in for different applications, I've found that I've gone from thinking about it initially just with sort of almost wide-eyed excitement, thinking about all the opportunities that this offers, to realizing that there was real risk, and that we really needed, we meaning the scientific community, and really frankly the human community, needed to be aware of this and discussing it. And one of the things that sort of brought that to the forefront of my mind was a dream that I had fairly early on, in which I was, I walked into a room and a colleague of mine said to me, Jennifer, I'd like you to explain the CRISPR technology to a friend. And he brought me into a room, and a person was sitting with their back to me. And as they turned around, I realized with sort of a horror that it was Hitler. It was actually Hitler with a sort of a pig nose, and it almost looked like a chimeric pig human sort of creature. And it was it sounds funny in a way to relate that image, but in the dream it was a terrifying thing. And I really felt real, just stone cold fear in the dream, and sort of woke up from that dream with a start and realized, kind of had this initial feeling of what have I done, and that was really one of the things that motivated me to get out of the lab and start talking to people more broadly about the technology, about its capabilities, about the great things about it, but also about things that really required really deep thought and careful consideration and regulation.
Pretty cool, huh? a research scientist that started just 10 years ago, going from creating a technology that can change the evolutionary path of the human race to her own self-awareness. She actually says it out loud. My God, what have I done? That's why she wrote the book. It's her really explaining her fears and her concerns, as well as the potential of this incredible technology, right? But interesting, one of the smartest, bravest people I've ever seen. Can you imagine how brave it is for her to talk about a dream she has? She's a research scientist. Traditionally, when they start talking about stuff like that, they disappear from the public eye, right? You're looking at this generation's Albert Einstein, right? 100 years from now, she's who they're going to be studying in college. She invented CRISPR. Make sense? Really cool. And then she immediately began questioning the ethics of this biohacking technology. Sir?
Has anybody given consideration to the monetizing this technology, this CRISPR? If you start monetizing it,
Of course. Of course. So are people really using CRISPR at home and in their garage and using it to make money? Of course they are. We live in the age of the internet. Meet Josiah Zahner. And I think I'll just let Josiah, I have a lot of videos for you guys tonight. So Josiah is the first guy that ever made up his own CRISPR concoction and injected himself with it. He's a PhD research scientist, but he's a biohacker of the first order. He wants to sell you a DIY, got it, CRISPR editing kit for 20 bucks that you can take home and start making your own CRISPR stuff.
should have come out with a better hair tone.
Oh, dude, wait till you see him. He's got all kinds of things that need some work. But yeah, so I'm going to let Josiah talk about himself.
People who have been fucked by the system are now trying ways to unfuck themselves.
There's a lot of things that people think is like 15 years away, which we'll see in 6 to 8 months.
We're in a world of exponentially advancing technology. And exponentially advancing technology cannot survive the bottlenecks of bureaucracy.
Here in this downtown Oakland Community Center, over 100 citizen scientists gathered for the Biohacking Planet Conference. Many of them have set up labs and garages and don't have any formal degree whatsoever.
The stigma of smart people and science is invented. Science works no matter who you are.
Instead of breaking into and manipulating computer systems like typical hackers, they're focused on hacking living organisms, with the hopes of curing illness and in some cases obtaining superhuman powers. Their shared mission is to put this technology into the hands of as many people as possible.
People should be able to use all the technologies that science develops, right? It shouldn't be just patented and given to companies or exclusively given to certain people.
There's a lot of innovation that people have no idea about. And if you're not way up in the middle of it, there's a lot of things that people think is like 15 years away, which you'll see in 6 to 8 months. And I mean, it's
These do-it-yourself biologists say the democratization of science has given them the freedom to work on projects that are often ignored by larger institutions. They're using gene editing technologies like CRISPR to create personalized treatments for those suffering from rare diseases or cancer, experimenting with magnetic and vibrating implants to alter the sensory experience, reverse engineering pharmaceuticals like EpiPen so people can make their own medicine at home, and even creating glow-in-the-dark beer.
I think this is the most exciting time thus far in the history of the world to be alive.
Personalized medicine is going to change everything. It's going to rock the world because you can't do a clinical trial on one person. But medicine is starting to progress to the point where I can sequence your genome, I can sequence your cancer's genome, I can find the difference, I can develop an immunotherapy so that I can get your body to respond to your cancer specifically, not anybody else's cancer. But I also can't test that on anybody but you. That's going to be crazy, and that's going to be awesome.
Earlier this year, the Food and Drug Administration began placing restrictions on non-human genetic modifications.
This is from the
Declared that genetically edited animals must be classified
It's a
as drugs. This would give the agency broad authority over a number of do-it-yourself genetics tests and would require experiments involving animals to go through the same vetting process as a new drug.
I guess they couldn't call them cosmetics, they could have called them foods. They're like dog food drugs.
David Ishii, a canine breeder from Mississippi who is working on editing out genetic diseases in dogs, says the restrictions will mean only large companies can research genetic cures for animals.
Everybody's worried about what somebody could do with this technology, and nobody seems to care about the damage that not doing it will cause. Like, these animals that are dying anyway. Like, they're gonna die.
So I want to pause there. So also what that means, just practically, if the United States government restricts research on animals, what are these people going to do? They're either going to go underground or they're going to leave the United States.
North Korea will take them.
Maybe. But you get my point. This is the same slippery slope politically that we found ourselves in with stem cell research. And we lost the edge on stem cell research, potentially, still debatable, because of some of the Bush era administration policies. This policy is dangerous. It sounds correct. Making a glow in the dark cat, is that ethical? You're injecting a cat with chemicals from sea creatures that live at the bottom of the ocean, and you're changing its genetic structure to make it glow in the dark. Is that ethical? No. Should it be illegal? We are on the path of making it illegal. But you get my point. It's dangerous because the same things that work in the animals will work in humans. And you got what Zane said. There's no clinical trials here. I'm making it for you, right? I'm making it for one of you by by sequencing your DNA and then making something for you. Do you remember when we talked about the future of drugs and pharmaceuticals? We talked about specific cocktails of drugs and for recreation that were made for specific people. This is the technology that makes all that possible. And I get this guy's frustration. He's trying to help save dogs and animals. How many large corporations would spend money on that, on something that could potentially be low cost or free? Not Ralston Purina, right? Taking your dog to get cancer therapy with a genetically, I can't even imagine how much that would cost, right? So he's got an interesting idea, and I get his point. The government's in his way. So as much as I throw up some of the dangers of this stuff, I also want to point out it's dangerous to stop it in some cases.
Like, these animals that are dying anyway. Like, they're going to die every day until we do something about it.
Regulation can undermine biohacking breakthroughs for humans as well.
And people are so afraid of how will this be used in the wrong way. You know what I'm afraid of? I'm afraid that all these people dying of fucking cancer and all these people who are dying of hunger aren't going to get cured, aren't going to get fed, because we're not allowing people to have access to this technology.
Now, it's governed by a regulatory framework cobbled together in the mid-80s out of statutes that are now 70 and 80 years old, that existed before we knew DNA was important. The regulations don't fit the reality and are not set up to try to distinguish between good uses and bad uses.
I'm a huge fan of deregulation because I believe in the inherent goodness of capitalism and everything. Stuff doesn't progress unless people do useful things with it, right? And people are naturally inclined to stop bad things that happen with it.
We will be able to design life in ways that the 19th century taught us how to design buildings. Life is going to become something that we make and remake and edit and re-edit.
If we are genuine proponents of freedom, then people should have the liberty to use their bodies in whatever way they see fit, and to undertake inquiry and think and explore however they see fit.
Little scary. Okay. So, Zane, Josiah Zahner. So I'm going to read you something from my friends here at the, darn it, I can't see it. Oh, it's supposed to be on there. You can't give credit because there's no credit on the screen. So Josiah Zahner watched a biotech CEO drop his pants at a biohacking conference and inject himself with untested herpes treatment and realized that things had gone off the rails. Zahner is no stranger to stunts in biohacking, loosely defined as experiments often on the self that take place outside of traditional lab spaces. You might say he invented their latest incarnation. He sterilized his body to transplant his entire microbiome in front of a reporter. He's squabbed with the FDA about selling a kit to make glow-in-the-dark beer. He's extensively documented attempts to genetically engineer the color of his skin, and most notoriously, he injected his arm with DNA encoding for CRISPR that could theoretically enhance his muscles while taking swigs of scotch during a live stream event during an October conference. And even Zahner himself in the live stream did concede that it is unlikely to work. So when Zahner saw Ascendance Biomedical CEO injecting himself on a live stream earlier this month, you might say there was an uneasy flicker of recognition. Ascendance Bio soon fell apart in almost comical fashion. The company's own biohackers who created the treatment, but who were not being paid, revolted, and the CEO wound up locking himself in the lab. Even before all that, the company had another man inject himself with an untested HIV treatment on Facebook Live. And just 2 days after the pantsless herpes treatment stunt, another biohacker who shared lab space with Ascendance Bio posted a video detailing a self-created gene therapy for lactose intolerance. The stakes in biohacking seem to be getting higher and higher. Honestly, I kind of blame myself, Zahner told me recently. He's been in a soul-searching mood and recently had a kid, and the backlash to the CRISPR stunt in October, and it's been getting to him because he had a child, right? And he's thinking about, what kind of message am I sending here? There's no doubt in my mind that someone is going to end up hurt eventually, he said. Zahner holds a PhD in biochemistry and biophysics, and he now runs a company called the Odin that sells the DIY CRISPR kits, including the CRISPR construct he injected in himself for the muscle growth. He has long had critics, and he certainly does not speak for the entire biohacking community, but given that even the most visible stuntman in biohacking is worried about the effects of these stunts, I asked him to reflect on his recent events. So the next part of this, and I'm going to actually hit escape here because I want to see if this will show me. I think my picture just doesn't show it. Shoot, it actually doesn't show it. Shoot. Darn, I wish I could get credit. But if you look this up, this was a great interview where they actually interview him all the way through. Oh man, I can only do it from the beginning? Oh no, from there. So it's if you can find this article, I'm sorry I don't have the reference to it, which will probably get me in trouble, but it was a great article, and the interview was fantastic, and it's just almost completely reflective of Jennifer Doudna going through the same like evolution, where she realizes, you know, what she said, it's a crack in creation, it's a change. We just hit that point where everything's changed. And it's changing so fast that we don't really have a handle. And now people just are running rampant with this technology, and it's a good thing. But it's an amazingly dangerous and amazingly positive at the same time. So I think it's interesting that both, you know, one of the top genetic research people in the world and an avowed stuntman biohacker have had the same evolution, almost in the exact same time frame of what they're doing. So it's interesting from two very different perspectives. So what should we do about all this? Right? Should we regulate it? Should we not regulate it? Should we stop it? Should we accelerate it? Should we build DIY CRISPR kits? I don't know. I think we're asking the wrong question. I think the question is, what can we do about this? Nothing. Yeah, if you do regulation though, you're going to slow it down and you're going to restrict it only to research institutions. And that is not the right answer. Imagine if we had taken computer science and made it only so that research institutions could do it. It would have been a terrible idea. I don't think we can do anything about this.
And there's a difference though. When you're talking about computers, you're not injuring anybody.
Really?
No.
You control the world's financial systems, including all of the energy today through computers. There's no physical damage, I get that. But we're about to cross into a world where there is physical damage, right? Think about reputation. Think about how many people have committed suicide. How many kids are bullied on the systems that we created today?
Yeah, when you're talking about any type of research for human use, that has to be very tightly.
Well, even animal use, right? That you're affecting biology, and we are not ready, to your point, to protect ourselves against a biological threat that's been manufactured.
But
Yeah, who's going to pay for that? I mean, that's going on inside people's garages. You know, there's no way to know what's going on here. And even if you try to regulate it, you guys got this. The genie's out of the bottle.
It's interesting though, because one guy, George Church, who's
Yep.
like the father of like synthetic biology, he like, I guess he made some, I don't know exactly what it was, but like he made some editing tool, so if you edited it, that organism would only survive on like a synthetic protein made in the lab. So even if it like got out, like this new bacteria would just die. So they're already experimenting with like these kind of tethers to like keep this thing back just in case it got out.
So wait, I'm going to give you the Jeff Goldblum answer. So wait a minute. So what you're saying is all the dinosaurs are female. It's biology, right? You know.
They're offering it also to vulnerable people who might otherwise have other medical treatments should be a consideration. People who are desperate.
And exactly. There's so much advantage. There's so many things that these kids could invent that could help people. Right? Like the guy with the dogs. I'm with that guy. He wants to save dogs from diseases that are treatable and preventable. And no one's doing it. At a free or near free cost. But no one's doing it, just him. And they're going to stop him. Is that right? Is that capitalism? I mean, does that work? And can you stop him? Because he's just going to go somewhere else.
Who is the they that's going to stop him? The government?
Well, it would be the U.S. government, and then he'd just leave the U.S.
Oh, yeah.
Right? You're going to leave him no choice. Or he'll go underground, to your point. He'll go underground and do it illegally and make a lot more money. Yeah, these are like the drugs of the future. You're not going to pay money for like heroin and cocaine and all that crap we've been doing for the last 30, 40, 60, 800 years. You're going to get like a steroid treatment that makes you stronger and faster and helps you think. It makes you a better person. And you're going to buy it on the underground market if we over-regulate it.
But there has to be some regulation. You can't do anti-herpes research.
Well, the guy injecting himself with untested herpes, if you do it to yourself, you know, people inject themselves with herpes all the time. I just have to say that.
They got at least keep their pants on.
They just don't do it with a needle, right?
But suicide is illegal.
That's true. Suicide is illegal. And I'm being a little flippant because it's not really funny, but it kind of is. You know, we do have a right in America to our own bodies, right? And we protect it pretty fiercely. And a lot of these guys are only doing stuff to themselves. They're not doing stuff to other people. But that Josiah is a classic poster child, right? He's a wild man. He's going out and doing crazy things because he wants attention. And then when he started getting attention, he saw the attention he was getting compounding and growing and, you know, causing other people to do things that were more and more crazy. And he started it, and it's inevitable. He feels a little guilt for that. And then he had a child. You know, I could totally understand in the motion of his life, him suddenly going, "Oh my God, I don't want to be that guy that 20 years from now, you know, everybody blames me for doing this." And he kind of did. He kind of started the showboating of genetic craziness. And that's not the right answer. The right answer is, as with all science, right? All science should be methodical, repeatable, testable, and as much as we can, controlled. But whenever a new thing comes on the planet, and that's the whole point of this, before I turn it over to you guys, because my next slide I think is, now it's your turn. Okay, oops, that went away very quickly. So, I guess not. So you guys don't get your turn. So science has to be done a certain way. But whenever a new technology comes out, it goes out the window, right? When we started building buildings taller and we started the steel age, did we really think about things correctly? No, we built bridges and a lot of them fell down. We built buildings, a lot of them fell down. We just started experimenting with stuff. And it was construction companies doing that, not scientists. It was construction companies trying to build.
We have thousands of codes now.
Yeah, and now we have codes. But back then it went crazy when the shipbuilding industry really took off, right? We started building crazy ships. Any technology that's new that comes along, it explodes. And it's the more information system you have that drives that, the bigger the explosion, right? The shorter the time to acceptance as well. Have you guys ever looked at the time to acceptance of like every technology, the printing press, the book, the radio, and then pagers, and then television, and the internet, and on and on? It gets shorter and shorter, the time to acceptance. And every new thing, the iPhone was like crazy. From the time it was invented till the time it had reached something like 30% of the human population was incredible. And now, when a new technology comes out, it's almost instantaneous around the whole planet.
Well, that's the instant gratification of human nature.
Well, and it's also the global information system that you find out about these things. Everybody starts texting each other, and it comes out on BuzzFeed, and suddenly it's like, wow, it's all Mashable, and it's on Vice.
The big problem is that these people are individuals. They don't have the financial resources, they don't have the staff to really fully investigate any side effects or any dangers of the procedures that they're doing.
Absolutely, and neither does Jennifer. Nobody has that. We do not have simulation systems, we do not have computing systems that can outstrip biology today, which means if we create something that has an after effect, we won't know about it until it's too late. There's no way we'll know, because we can't simulate it. We just don't have the computing power to do it.
That's the purpose of clinical trials.
True, which slows
It slows it down.
development, but has been a good system for a while. But a lot of those clinical trial things, like the doctor from Stanford were saying, those were invented a long time ago, and a lot of the legislation that drives what goes through clinical trials and what doesn't was built a long time ago. And as we're getting out into this wild west of experimentation, it's going to be interesting.
They're using CRISPR already for certain types of blood cancers.
Sure.
I mean, what they're doing is they're taking the stem cells from a patient, they're turning it over, and about 3 weeks later, after it's been altered, they re-inject it. So, I mean, it's being used on it.
It's amazing, yeah. It's amazing technology. And we should be doing that. Like the example Jennifer gave of the Zika virus, of changing the genome of mosquitoes. Thank you.
But, you know,
But wow.
They've done that as far as like with mosquitoes. I mean, they bred mosquitoes which do not have the ability to reproduce. And what the idea is to have a mate with the more active mosquitoes, and that way to eliminate it. And they use that quite widely in Florida. It's a big employment.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, like I said, it's a great idea. We're not going to not do these things. We're going to do all these things, right? But some of it's going to be in a lab. And most of these guys you saw that are biohackers are PhDs working in labs. They're not in a garage. There wasn't one of them I saw that was in a garage. Maybe the dog guy. But the rest of them are PhDs in labs. And they have access to all kinds of gear. And they're just choosing to go around the peer review system, right? They're just making a different choice of how they experiment. And it's dangerous. It's dangerous. But I don't think it's any more or less dangerous than what I see going on in professional laboratories, because this technology is so new.
So if you can buy this little pack,
The DIY CRISPR kit?
wouldn't that be the best terrorist weapon ever? I mean,
Absolutely.
so some Joe Blow terrorist dude could just do whatever.
Josiah's little speech he gives at the end about capitalism and self-regulating and everyone will just do the right thing. Goodness gracious me. He's a research scientist. Of course he's naive. He's focused on one thing and it's all great. It's all great. Think of all the things I can do. Where Jennifer was 6-7 years ago, right? Where she was like, oh my God, this is so incredible. And as you start to think about,
And she dreamed about Hitler.
well, she dreamed about Hitler a long time ago. But she's starting to have that thought, oh my God, what have I done? And it's not her. This is inevitable. If it can be done, it will be done. And it is inevitable that we were going to do this, right? We started down this path literally centuries ago. And this is just continuing to play out as you get towards the third eon. What's one of the requirements to get to Eon 3? You must become a master of biology. The human race must look at biology as a tool, as a toy, and not as a piece. That's one of the base concepts that I talk about. Mastering biology means that. It's child's play. And if it's not child's play, and the one with the Stanford guy where he shows the little stuff in the Petri dish, he's like, this is like engineering was 100 years ago or 200 years ago at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. What back then was big science is today child's play. This is the erector set of the future. It must become child's play. Ragesh, sorry.
You kind of just stole my thunder. I was going to say that something similar. From what I've heard today and seen, it seems like we're still steeped in AEON 2. We're still in the biology, this freaking death thing we can't get out, right? So we're looking at death, how do we look at death? And all of these things are actually cool. They're stepping stones to where we're really going. So these are little industries that get us closer. The real goal is what this group is about. It's about AEON 3.
Mm-hmm.
And AEON 3, all of that is irrelevant.
Yeah, it's just part of the
If
path.
I'm virtual, I don't need to stick stuff in my skin. I'm just
Right.
I'm mind, which spiritualists have always said, you're more mind than body.
Yep. There's a couple of technologies that get us to this place, right? One is you have to become a master of biology. You have to be it's got to be child's play. The other one is you have to be a master of computer science. You have to be a master of information technology. We're rocketing forward with biology right now. And a few years ago, all the investment dollars, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, was all going to computer science. Computer science rocketed ahead of biology, right? We pushed up against the envelope of what was doable. And then the money got bored. It wasn't making enough returns, so it switched to biology, right? And then now everything is funded is about biology. We're getting to, in the next 10, 15 years, we'll get to the push on that. We'll be pushing the limits of what we can do. We need to switch it back. And we need to not switch. We need to do both of these simultaneously. The two are one thing. They're not two separate things. If you rocket forward with biology without proper simulation capability, you're stuck with the peer review process, which in this kind of information age is not going to work. It's just not going to work. The government needs, and researchers need tools to simulate long tail effects of like removing the Zika virus from a mosquito. What does that mean? And the best movie I ever saw that gives us is Jurassic Park. You just didn't think through bringing dinosaurs back. Because there's no way to think this through. Humans can't do this. This is an AI thing. I'm actually pitching for AI, which is weird. But do you get the division? Humans are good at one thing, AIs are good at that thing. They need to be able to simulate billions or trillions of potential outcomes and give us probabilities based on if we make this one little change, what does that mean in the entire biological structure? That's AI. That is not human. And we're just starting down that path. So you guys get it? A couple little building blocks, things that go together. But I thought this was fascinating. It was a lot of fun doing the research for it. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoyed the tour through the current state of affairs. And this is all brand new. When I was looking at the dates, I was trying to decide, do I show something from 2017 or 2018? There was like nothing from 2013 or 14, a little bit, but really not much. That one video clip of Jennifer when she was younger was like from 2016, I think. So long ago. Yeah, and I can't even imagine where this is going to be 5 years from now. Just imagine 5 years from now, there's going to be some guy on the street literally selling you an anti-cancer treatment for your dog or some crazy stuff you're going to be able to buy on the internet. And if we regulate it, it's still going to happen. It's just going to go down the Silk Road instead of eBay, right? This is going to be a different distribution mechanism. So I don't think anything can stop this. We can just make it mainstream and observe it, or make it non-mainstream and it still happens anyway, and we just don't get to see it. So anyway, I'm going to end there for the recording. Thanks very much everyone on Facebook and YouTube for watching. We're going to go into overtime now and continue the discussion. Thanks very much. Thanks you guys. You guys are awesome. Thanks tons.